Porto adventure like
It is the year 1410. Find Porto as it used to look by the time of the Portuguese discoveries. People on the caravel, what brings you here? If it's spices and precious stones, you're in the right place. Nowadays, all roads lead to Lisbon. Our beloved King Manuel keeps it in permanent construction. Here, the flagship naval yard was built, one of the most important naval shipyards belonging to the Portuguese Ocean Empire. It was also from here that in 1497, Vasco da Gama departed towards India. To celebrate, the best architects and artists were recruited to build the famous Belém Tower that you just passed through. By this time, Lisbon was one of the most sumptuous cities in Europe.
being pulled around on a chair. That's cool.
Today is August 21st, 1415. Within those walls, 20,000 merchants dedicate themselves to the daily trade of spices, tissues, oriental carpets, precious stones, and gold from the South Sahara. There is also the main source of cereals and raw materials for the textile industries, such as leather, fur, and colorants. We are therefore at the heart which controls all the trade between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. When the Portuguese king, John I, carved his spear here in the north of Africa, he made his desire to reconquer the kingdom of Fez very clear. Although it was true that the Portuguese excelled in their knowledge of Muslim lands, and therefore were able to increase their wealth and trade power, they weren't so lucky with their aim of spreading Christian faith, and encountered strong resistance from the highly Islamized African population. Businesses of the sea made Ceuta the starting point of the Portuguese adventure across the world. Years ago, these far western lands were seen as the end of the world. Sailors refused to navigate beyond Cape Bojador. Many adventurers dared to face the Atlantic, but they never came back. Giant snakes were believed to rule the seas. The mythology was full of stories of lands inhabited by faceless men. An immense abyss awaited on the other side. Despite his failed attempts, and in 1434, his trusty squire, Gil Ames, managed to reach the other side of the cape. Despite his failed attempts, Henry the Navigator never gave up, and in 1434, his trusty squire, Gil Ames, managed to reach the other side of the cape. It was then, however, that the Tenebris was revealed. of unearthly power. Things that had never been seen before. Throughout that period, in 1494, Portuguese and Spanish kingdoms led the greatest world division in history upon the signature of the Treaty of Tordesillas. This was also a time of huge naval innovations, such as the kits brought from Lisbon, which enabled the construction of a new ship in just 12 days. The square-rigged caravel appeared, allowing for a much greater military control. The Portuguese prepared to take Europe beyond the Mediterranean. Let us continue this adventure into the forest. Changing landscapes and ecosystems. Tobacco consumption soon spread in Asia and Europe. Potatoes and beans contributed largely to the agrarian revolution in England during the 17th century, which led soon afterwards to the industrial revolution of the 18th century. Sugar also became an Atlantic product. From Europe, fruit trees, vegetables and cereals crossed the ocean, which allowed for the development of colonial societies. These were profitable times. Portuguese discoverers found the source of pepper, ginger, cinnamon and clove, but they also found that the Moors controlled its trade. The arrival of the Portuguese Armada was made possible by one of the bravest men in this adventure, Vasco da Gama. There you find him, at your left, eager to negotiate with the Zamarin of Calicut. In India, explorers were dazzled by gold, pearls and diamonds. A story was told of a sailing king who possessed the most famous ruby ever seen in the world. It was so huge that it was a foot long and the thickness of a fat man. But what did the Portuguese leave in India? In Goa, they created the first Portuguese city, and there produced coins, built naval shipyards, and set up the first munitions factory. Secondary and university education were made possible, typography was introduced, and at the same time, the foundations of modern pharmacology were set. Kalpataru is a magic tree that, according to Indian beliefs, grants all wishes. Dare to flip a coin and make your wish.
You don't know?
If you want.
Lots of people obviously have, but
It was in 1515 that the Portuguese arrived in Timor, originally called Timor, which means east. At the very beginning, they carried the abundant sandalwood, highly sought in Europe for the manufacture of luxury furniture and perfumes. In the 17th century, after losing the Moluccas and the Malacca, and expelled by the Dutch from the Sulawesi island, Portuguese explorers returned to Timor and found a Portuguese community. Timor then became the basis of their activities. The first contacts with China were not successful. For some time, Portuguese discoverers were forced to smuggle valuable Chinese porcelains and silks from Malacca. But the time came when they were able to take advantage of the unfriendly relationship between Japan and China by offering their services as intermediaries. The demand for Chinese silk was so high and the potential for trade was so strong that the mandarins did not hesitate to establish commercial agreements with the Portuguese. Trade with Japan then became protected by well-equipped government ships, and maritime piracy almost disappeared. As a reward, by 1553 the Portuguese kingdom was granted the everlasting lease of Macau. Through Macau, new goods were introduced in China. Portuguese traditional samosas led to the Chinese pancake. They also introduced sweet potato in the Chinese metropolis, which became the main food in the Guangdong province. From China, the Portuguese brought tea, which was later introduced in England by Catherine of Braganza when she married Charles II. We are in 1543. Let us look at Japan. The adventure starts with a violent storm and a ship that was dragged into the coast. The local governor welcomed the weird-looking explorers, and the Portuguese Francisco Zemoto offered him his musket. This moment, happening on your right, had an irreversible impact on the pacification of the rising Sun Empire. The delicate Japanese were surprised by the Portuguese rude manners. They called them Nabanjin, meaning South Barbarians. Portuguese started travelling to Japan, exchanging Chinese silks and gold for silver, copper, lacquered objects and swords. The relationship has been so strong that it still remains today. The first Japanese grammar was written by the Portuguese, and the new words were introduced such as obrigado, which means arigato in Japanese. The same happened with Chinese tea, which was highly appreciated in Japan by that time. Liturgical rites were introduced in the traditional Chanayu ceremony by Portuguese missionaries, a true symbiosis of cultures. April 1500, the Armada headed by Pedro Álvares Cabral found the land of Veracruz. Pedro Vaz da Caminha registered that amazing moment when two strange worlds communicated for the first time. They are brown-skinned, of quite a reddish complexion, with handsome faces and noses. They stand naked, with no clothing. No resistance was offered, and they presented us with ivory, precious stones and gold. Not even the Catholic liturgical rites scared them. Soon, this land became known as Brazil, since there were many trees with reddish-brown trunk that seemed to be burning. In Portuguese, this is described by the word brasa, which means on fire. With all the attention focused on India, it was only after 1534 that King John III started to pay attention to the settlement in the Brazilian territory and to the development of sugar and mining industries. Sugarcane was grown and sugar mills were built in all captain ships, from São Vicente to Pernambuco. But let us go back to the letter sent to the King of Portugal, and to the true intention of the Portuguese adventure in these lands, the search for gold and other mineral wealth. For many years, expeditions were sent into the woods to search for metals and precious stones, but with no success. The first significant discoveries happened in the late 16th century. With the discovery of gold and diamond mines, thousands of Portuguese migrated to Brazil, and Portuguese became the national language. This monument, next to the golden sands, signals to winds and skies and others that will pass by the Portuguese legacy. And the shields whisper to the unending ocean that the boundless sea is Portuguese.